A soldier walked back into a burning building alone. No backup, no orders, no one waiting on the other side. His senior officer had told him to wait until morning. He looked at the man, nodded, and walked in anyway. What he left behind when he went through that door: a marriage falling apart, a father desperately calling every number he had, a wife who didn't even know where he was. Nobody talks about that part. They talk about the soldier. They talk about the courage. This is the part they don't talk about. From the time he was old enough to recognize a uniform, Sandeep Unnikrishnan wanted one. Not the way kids want things and forget about them a week later. The permanent kind, the kind that doesn't negotiate. He would see a soldier on the street and just stop, go completely still, like he'd recognized something that already belonged to him. He grew up in a house where his parents wanted something different for him, something safe, something that meant he came home every evening and the people waiting for him knew he would. His father never said the fear out loud, but it was always there in the silences, in the way certain conversations shifted when they got too close to the future. Sandeep didn't argue with any of it. He just continued being exactly who he was. He was the kind of teenager who stepped between strangers and danger without stopping to think about it. He noticed when people were in trouble before he noticed anything else about a situation. At school, people gravitated toward him without fully being able to explain why. That quality eventually brought him to a girl standing in the wrong restroom. Her name was Isha. She came from money, which in her case hadn't produced happiness so much as a well-furnished version of loneliness. Her father was always working. Her mother was always performing. Isha had everything that was supposed to make a person feel secure, and almost none of the things that actually did. Sandeep found excuses to talk to her. She wasn't immediately interested. He kept showing up anyway, not in a pressuring way, just genuinely, cheerfully present. Eventually she started looking forward to him. That surprised her. She hadn't been expecting it. By the time school ended, something real had grown between them. At the farewell event, Sandeep showed up in military dress, deliberate, unapologetic, because the Navy was where he was headed, and he saw no reason to pretend otherwise. Isha looked at him that evening, and felt something she couldn't quite name. The specific feeling of watching someone be entirely themselves, without needing anyone's approval. On the ride home, she was close to telling him. The words were ready. Then Sandeep spotted a man attacking a woman on a nearby street, saw what he thought was an acid bottle, was out of the car before the thought finished forming. The bottle had alcohol in it. The woman was okay. Sandeep came back. Isha looked at him with fear in her face, and something else underneath it. She told him that she'd spent her whole childhood waiting for parents who were always somewhere else. She didn't want to spend her life waiting for a soldier who might not come back. She said if he chose the uniform, they should stay friends. He went home that evening and found out the Navy had rejected him. His parents tried not to look relieved. His father said all the right things. The relief was visible anyway. Then Isha said something that changed the direction of everything. She told him a uniform wasn't limited to one branch. There were other ways, other doors that fit the same person. He went home, looked his father in the eyes, and said he was applying to the Indian Army. His family knew the quality of his decisions. His father held his fear, set it down, and pulled his son into a hug. Training was where Sandeep finally had a language for what he'd always been. The program was built to find out what people were actually made of. The ones performing strength eventually separated from the ones built from it. Sandeep was built from it. He wasn't the loudest person in any room, but he was consistently the one people looked toward when things got serious. He wrote letters to Isha all through training. Long ones, frequent ones, the kind you write when the feeling is too big to just sit with. None of them arrived. None of hers did either. A cadet who'd been measuring himself against Sandeep since week 1 and losing had been intercepting everything in both directions. He'd hidden every letter out of a resentment that had nowhere better to land. Sandeep spent months thinking Isha had simply moved on. He carried that quietly, didn't make it anyone else's problem. When the truth came out, he had one day before she left the country. He packed a bag and ran. He found her with barely enough time to explain everything. He took her to a bus station. His bus left in 5 minutes. He told her his time would never be entirely his own, but that whatever portion of it he controlled would belong only to her. He boarded the bus. Just before it pulled away, he said the 3 words she'd once tried to say to him on that car ride home and never managed to deliver. She ran after the bus. She reached him. She said them back. They got married a few years later. Those years had a specific kind of happiness in them, the kind that belongs to 2 people who've accepted a difficult arrangement and are building something real inside it anyway. Sandeep was posted across different assignments. Isha traveled with him at first. Then a job offer came from Bangalore, a good one, the kind that fit who she was, and Sandeep pushed her to take it. even knowing what it meant for how often they'd be in the same place. He understood her dreams the way he understood most things about people. Without requiring long explanations, she moved to Bangalore. They started the long-distance arithmetic of a military marriage, counting the days between calls, trying not to let the counting define the relationship. It was during one of his long absences that she ended up in a hospital. She didn't tell him. He called from a field location that had just regained signal after weeks without it. She said she was fine. She was saying it from a hospital bed. She'd made a decision about what he needed to hear while he was out there, and the decision was that he needed to hear she was fine. When he found out, the fight that followed was the kind that happens between two people who love each other but have been accumulating distance long enough that the love has started to feel like a concept rather than a daily reality. She said she'd spent her life waiting, for her parents first. Now for him, being alone in that hospital had made something clear that she'd been trying not to let become clear. He left again before she finished telling him what it was. The envelope that arrived at his posting not long after contained divorce papers. He didn't sign them. He carried them with him, along with his mother's sari, the one he'd hold against his face when he missed home, because the fabric still carried her presence in a way that nothing else did. He was carrying both when the call came about Mumbai. The attack didn't announce itself. Terrorists came in by sea. They split into groups. They planted bombs in taxis that went off before anyone understood what was happening. Then they moved on the Taj Mahal Palace Hotel with automatic weapons and a very simple objective: as many people dead as possible, as fast as possible. Inside the hotel, a woman named Pramoda had just checked in. A young girl named Shaylee had cheerfully introduced herself in the corridor a few hours earlier. Shaylee was staying with her father. By the time Pramoda understood what the gunshots meant, Shaylee's father was dead and the girl was alone in a room somewhere in the building. Pramoda went and found her. She kept her close. The NSG was mobilized. Sandeep found out about the attack and went straight to his superior. He was a training officer. The men going into the hotel weren't his assignment. His superior told him exactly that. Sandeep told him that the men going in were people he had personally trained, that if they were going in, he should be there. He got permission. Before they moved out, he took a moment alone. He found a quiet space and held his mother's sari against his face. Then he put it away and joined the team. What nobody outside the operation fully understood that night was how badly the live television coverage was hurting them. Reporters were positioned around the hotel and broadcasting everything in real time: commando movements, entry points, hostage locations. The terrorists had handlers watching every channel. The handlers were feeding everything directly into the hotel. Every advantage the commandos thought they had was being dissolved on live television. Sandeep walked out during a pause and confronted the reporters. He told them people were dying while they chased ratings. He told them there were 24 hostages near the swimming pool. He asked them to stop broadcasting operational details. One reporter paused. She seemed to understand. Then she went back on air and broadcast every word he'd just said. Within minutes, the handlers had passed the pool location to the terrorists inside. They moved toward the pool. What they found was not 24 civilians. Sandeep and his team were underwater, waiting. 2 terrorists were dead before the situation could be reconsidered. The third ran and was caught. The detail about the pool had never been real. He'd known she would broadcast it. He'd given her something that would pull the terrorists toward a position he already controlled. It worked exactly the way he'd planned. But the hotel wasn't clear. A walkie-talkie Pramoda had found crackled with her voice. She identified herself. She identified Shaylee, who was struggling to breathe. She said they didn't have until morning. Sandeep's superior said no. Too many unknowns. Possibly a trap. The plan was to wait for first light. Sandeep stood in front of him and said that terrorists don't wait for first light. He said that if one person died in that building, because the rescue waited for a more convenient hour, he wouldn't be able to call himself a soldier. His superior looked at him. Then he asked how many soldiers should be risked for 21 hostages. Sandeep said being a soldier meant becoming the courage other people depended on. Then he walked toward the building, alone. He deployed tear gas through the corridors and moved floor to floor fast. He was shot in the neck. The bullet grazed through without finishing him. He was ordered to pull back. He kept moving. He found Pramoda. He found Shaylee. He got them out. Then the building closed around him. The remaining terrorists regrouped. Explosive charges brought down the section the officers outside were using as an entry route. The way in was gone. Sandeep was alone inside with what was left of an armed force that now had nothing to lose. He kept fighting. He was shot again and again. He kept fighting because stopping meant the terrorists reached the evacuation corridors where the rescued hostages were still moving, and that wasn't something he was willing to let happen. He forced them into corners. He kept them focused on him. He kept them away from everyone else. His voice came through the radio one last time. He told the officers outside not to come up. He said he'd handle it. Then the radio went quiet. When the officers finally broke through, the last terrorists were dead. So was Sandeep. He was 31 years old. His father spent that night calling every number he had. Nobody would tell him anything. He found out the way families find out when there hasn't been time to prepare a proper notification through a television broadcast. The anchor stated that NSG officer Major Sandeep Unnikrishnan had been martyred and moved on to the next update. His parents heard it in their living room. The divorce papers Isha had sent were returned to her at the funeral. A senior officer handed them over without much explanation. They were unsigned. She understood immediately. He had never intended to accept what she'd asked for. He'd been carrying those papers the same way he carried everything difficult. Not to resolve quickly, but to resolve right, when there was enough time and space to do it properly. He ran out of time before that moment came. She broke down completely. The grief and the guilt arrived together, and there was no way to separate them. The funeral brought thousands. The chant that moved through the crowd and reached his parents where they stood. His father, who had spent 31 years wishing his son had chosen a safer life, stood in the middle of that sound and felt something shift. 10 years later, at a memorial for the Mumbai attacks, his father was asked to speak. He said he had never wanted his son to join the army. He said when he looked at the faces around him, the people his son had saved, the soldiers his son had trained, the strangers whose names Sandeep had never known and whose lives he had protected anyway, he finally understood who his son actually was. He said Mahatma Gandhi didn't know the exact moment he would die, but his son had looked death directly in the face and chosen which direction to walk toward anyway. He said his son would not be remembered for the way he died. He would be remembered for the way he lived. The film ends on an image from before any of this happened. Sandeep, after crossing into Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, the moment that opened the film, his senior officer furious, Sandeep completely unbothered, is shown doing what he actually went there to do, playing cricket with children. Local kids, laughing, chasing a ball across disputed ground without any awareness of its political weight. Sandeep in the middle of them, equally happy, equally unbothered. His senior officer had asked him why he crossed into territory that didn't belong to India. He'd said, "But it does belong to us." He meant the children. He meant anyone on the other side of a line who needed someone to walk toward them. That had always been enough reason for him. The meaning of being a soldier, he once said, cannot simply be explained. It has to be lived. He lived it every single day he was given. And when the days ran out, he spent the last one exactly the same way he'd spent all the others, walking toward the people who needed someone to come, without once stopping to check whether the odds were in his favor.